How's it going, guys? I'm James from Kit Guru, and today we're looking at a new cheap and cheerful CPU cooler from Arctic. This is set to replace the Freezer 7 Pro, which has been running now for about 10 years, so the Freezer 7X is kind of an update or a refresh of the Freezer 7 series. The Freezer 7X is actually a little bit more compact compared to the previous version. It has just two 6mm copper heat pipes. They're direct touch and they're set into quite a crude looking aluminium base, but it's obviously, it's functional. As well as the two heat pipes, it has a total of 44 aluminium heatsink fins, and then there is a 92mm P-series Arctic fan, which is kind of set inside an airflow directional shroud, which just clips onto the heatsink. So the Freezer 7X comes with a very simple and straightforward installation process. Arctic has equipped it out of the box with a universal mounting bracket that works for both Intel and AMD systems. For the Intel installation, there is an extra plastic mounting plate that simply clips into place on the motherboard. So on either platform, you're only looking at about 5 or 10 minutes for installation. The main question we've got for the Freezer 7X is whether a CPU cooler is of this style or this size is really relevant today. The stock AMD coolers that come with the 3600X, 3700X are known to be really more than adequate for the CPU and the kind of loads that they're going to be put under. So we're not sure whether this would be any good to replace them, but obviously during our testing later on we'll find out what the thermal performance is and see how it compares to those stock CPU coolers. So let's have a look and see what Arctic has provided inside the box. So inside there's another smaller cardboard box. And there is the Intel plastic mounting bracket and 4 mounting clips that hold the Intel bracket in place. There's also a little warranty or compliments card from Arctic, and there is a QR code that takes you to a direct link to the installation guide. And then obviously there's the cooler itself. So at the base of the CPU cooler we can see this rather crude looking aluminium block with 2 copper direct touch 6mm heat pipes. And if you turn it around you can see 44 aluminium heatsink fins. And then at the front you can see this nice black and white 92mm P-series fan. Out of the box, the Freezer 7X comes with a pre-applied thermal coating, so that's nice to see. It'll obviously speed up the installation a little bit. The P-series fan is kind of clipped in place directly to the heatsink, and it's not too difficult to remove. The only issue I can see with that is if you wanted to use a different fan on this CPU cooler, you might have a struggle trying to mount it to the heatsink. So to install the cooler on an AMD AM4 platform, it is really quite simple and should only take a few minutes. First of all, you just need to make sure the 2 mounting hooks are aligned correctly, and then place the CPU cooler over the socket and hook the brackets into place. And then it's just a case of tightening up the 2 Phillips screws a little bit at a time, just to make sure the cooler seats in position correct. And then when you've got the cooler nice and tightly fixed in place, just take the 4-pin PWM cable and connect that up to your CPU fan header on the motherboard. Installation on an Intel platform does require a little bit more preparation, but it is also very, very simple. Just take the plastic Intel mounting bracket and then position that with the holes on the motherboard, and then once the bracket is in position, just take 4 of these plastic clips and push them through the mounting holes until they click in place. and then it's just a case of lowering the CPU cooler down onto the bracket and fasten it in place like we did on the AM4 platform. So one thing that is worth noting about the installation process of the Freezer 7X is if you have a Intel motherboard platform with quite a large VRM heatsink solution, such as the one on our Gigabyte Z390 Aorus Master, there may be an issue with interference between the cooler and the VRM heatsinks. To actually complete the installation on our Intel platform, we had to remove the VRM heatsinks to finally fit the Freezer 7X in position. This is something that is mentioned on the Arctic website, and they do have quite a comprehensive list of incompatible motherboards, so it's maybe worth checking out that list before you make the purchase. So now that we have the Freezer 7X installed into our test systems, we can have a look at the performance figures. So during our usual thermal performance test on the Intel Z390 test bench with the Core i9 9900K set to an all-core frequency of 3.6 GHz, the Arctic Freezer 7X is way down our chart, which is to be expected. However, the Freezer 7X easily beats the stock Intel cooler by over 20 degrees C under load. When measuring the thermal performance of the Freezer 7X against the two most popular stock AMD coolers, we can see that it easily outperforms the Wraith Spire by just over 5 degrees C under load, while the Wraith Prism has the best thermal performance out of the three. Again, this is no great surprise since the Prism has double the amount of heat pipes of the Freezer 7X and is technically one of the best stock CPU coolers we have seen for many years. With all the cooler's fan speeds set to 100% RPM, the Arctic Freezer 7X is noticeably quieter than both of the AMD stock coolers. So if you are looking for a cost-effective and quieter alternative to the stock AMD coolers, the Freezer 7X could be an attractive proposition. This also shows that the Freezer 7X has a good balance between noise levels and thermal performance. So the Freezer 7X, it's not a bad little CPU cooler. It's a pretty tidy looking thing once it's installed into the system, and it seems to be manufactured from high quality copper and aluminium. The plastic fan shroud may look a little bit cheap to some people, but I suppose that is a personal preference thing. In terms of the thermal performance, it easily outperformed the Intel stock cooler, so it could be a viable option to upgrade from that. But on the AMD side of things, performance was quite similar to the two stock AMD coolers, so we're unsure of whether it really is a worthwhile upgrade from the AMD stock coolers. And that obviously brings us back to our original question of whether a CPU cooler like this is really relevant these days. We'd really like to hear your opinions on that, so let us know in the comment section. So I hope you've enjoyed watching our review of the Arctic Freezer 7. If you have, then why not give us a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to the channel down below. We also have a Facebook page where you can discuss what you think of this cooler and of other hardware that we have reviewed recently. I've been James for Kit Guru. Thank you for watching.